Thank you so much. I want to discuss this issue as briefly as possible. From Transparency International, how big is this issue for you?
The issue of corruption?
Corruption and this golden visa scam we're talking about.
Well, it's our life's mission. We've spent 25 years working on this topic. We live and breathe the subject. Every waking moment is spent thinking about how we can make sure that there's less corruption.
How much effort have you put into this?
Well, we have 100 national chapters around the world, and we have an international secretariat in Berlin. People here in Brussels working on this, maybe 2,000 people around the world. That's not enough. It's never enough. We only scratch the surface too often. But I can assure you that every one of those people is fully committed to.
How close are we to eradicating corruption?
Oh, that's a big question. That's a big question. I don't think we are very close, unfortunately. I think the work that Transparency International do, that my organisation Global Witness does, is to shed a light on what these different types of corruption are. So, for example, today we're talking about golden visa schemes in the EU and the corruption risks that they pose. But I think one of the things that we've learned today is that there's a corruption life cycle. So you steal the money, where are you going to stash it? You stash it in a bank account in a country which is going to allow you to do that, and then you want to spend it. So you want to buy property, or you want to get a passport and have safe haven.
Yeah, I was asking before that the door is being the advocacy is that let's close the loopholes in Europe. Have you thought of this set of people moving across African continent?
Well, if we're good enough, I guess, and we manage to close EU door, that could be the next destination for all these activities and funds. We hope not, but the idea would be to make sure that there's no safe haven around the world.
Are you aware that the continent we are talking about, Africa, you hardly have access to data? And if you're struggling to get transparency in Europe, how much more in African continent?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think that's like the heart of our recommendations today, is to make sure that any golden visa schemes around the world, we're talking about Europe today, but any golden visa schemes have a high level of integrity, that there's high levels of background and due diligence checks before people are allowed in with huge amounts of money, and that there's transparency around those schemes, and that there's a public debate around what kind of risk appetite that particular country has. So if we started to get analysis or stories or information from Africa that said that these golden visa schemes were being set up there, then I think its onus is to look at those and to understand whether there's also corruption risks around those schemes.
Let me ask Transparency International. You said you've been around for almost 25 years now. How much influence have you had in African continent?
Well, we have seen a number of successes in Africa. And the context is different in each country, as you well know. But whether it's something like freedom of information legislation in Ghana, for example, or improvements in the transparency around payments to governments for exploiting oil and gas and mining revenues in the DRC, South Africa, we've seen progress, and it's partly through our efforts and the efforts of organisations like Global Witness and activists on the ground that we've made this progress. It never seems like enough, because essentially what we're fighting for here is an end to the kind of corruption that causes terrible poverty, terrible inequalities, and the economic degradation that you see in many of these countries. And that's going to take a lot more than the efforts of the 2,000 people I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, the efforts.
So join us, I would say. Come. I would say to the people watching this, we need your help to get these.
Yeah, the efforts in Africa have been on government, public government, but we also know that deeply rooted is about structure, about civil service. What can we do in that context?
Well, I guess one of the key priorities for the government should be the fight against corruption, because corruption activities actually has a big impact on the ability of the government to spend the money in adequate public services, good quality public services. So it's often overlooked because the focus is on economic issues, social issues, but corruption is at the heart of development of African countries and any other countries in the world.
The focus on corruption has always been on Africa. Africa is corruption, this is corruption, this is corruption. But the report you made today has just told us that it's as much as anywhere. In UK, so many of them have benefited so much, knowingly that this is crime. Then how are we the 21st century?
I think organisations like Global Witness and Transparency International have spent a lot of time raising awareness of actually the role of our own countries. So the role of London, the City of London in harbouring dirty money and allowing safe haven to criminals and people that are corrupt from all over the world. And I think the focus should be on the countries which you're most familiar with. So from the EU's perspective, we all work in the EU, so we are working to try and improve the EU, but our work in the EU is not just for EU citizens, it's also for citizens around the world, and Africa is a continent which is also affected, because what you often find is that the dirty money coming from people who have stolen it from particular countries. I mean, one really strong example that Global Witness has worked on is on the need for transparency around the oil sector, for example. And in Nigeria, 1.1 billion was lost from the state, so from the Nigerian people, because of a corruption scandal involving large multinationals, European multinationals, and the Nigerian government. So it's a complicit situation. There's a role for governments in Africa and in the EU and globally to take action, but there's also a role for companies and private business, and then there's also a role for civil society to actually shed light and provide solutions and to scrutinise the role of companies and governments.
How much effort, how much influence as transparency has on the EU as an institution in stopping the flow of this illicit money?
Well, I would say we have been very successful in raising awareness within the institutions about this issue, and we've had some concrete successes as well in terms of legislation to stop this flow of illicit funds. So recently our organisation, the Global Witness, and others campaigned to have stronger checks on the kind of money that's coming into the EU financial system, and that should help people in Africa and elsewhere as well.
What role do Africans have to play?
There is a role for every citizen in the world, I would say, about not accepting impunity anymore, not tolerating that governments have just promote secretive practices, and just call on the government to account for what they do and where they invest public money.
Transparency International, you have so many officers on ground in different countries in Africa. And a former minister in Nigeria recently just wrote a book on how difficult it is to fight corruption. Mm-hmm. How much difficulties have the people encountered in the process of it?
Well, all kinds of difficulties, but you could see it in different phases. First of all, it was very difficult to even make this, put this on the official agenda. People were very reluctant to talk about it. Donors were reluctant to talk about it. International institutions were reluctant to talk about it. Then, thanks to the efforts of organisations like ours and other brave individuals, this became a topic not only that you could talk about, but it became part of the international policy process. People were sort of thinking about what are the institutions, the laws that we need to fight this problem. But I think we're at a different phase now. We have international conventions about international anti-corruption conventions. We have anti-corruption laws, standards, programs, etc. This is every international donor is pushing this agenda. What we need now more than ever is a groundswell of popular opinion that says we need sustained effort here from you, political class to make sure that we get results. This isn't just about shuffling paper. It's not just about standing up at the UN General Assembly and making a speech. This is about concrete improvements for the daily lives of people, whether it's access to basic services like medicine, education, all these kind of fundamental issues. That's we need as I said, your viewers. So we need your support to do that. There's a limit to what we. As organizations based in Germany, Brussels, or wherever, even our national chapters on the ground, we need to reach out and get the support of people from all over the country.
Reports like these are often disputed. To just throw it away that when efforts like this are put into and somebody just dismissed with a wave of hand, how do you feel?
Well, I think that's why we put so much work and effort into ensuring that our research and our recommendations are to the highest integrity, and they're backed up by evidence, and they're backed up by source material, and I think that this is the only real fight that we can do, because we are living in a world where there is a lot of fake information. It does make the job of organisations like ours very difficult, but we have to maintain that, because that is how you're actually going to see change. You're never going to see change on the basis of fake information. So I think what we always stand by is the credibility of our research and our investigations. And that's been challenged in the court before, for example, and we have won that case. But it is a difficult environment, and what I would say to your viewers and to your listeners is make sure that your research is solid, but also that don't be afraid to call out power, because otherwise you have a situation where we don't have democratic systems because people are too afraid. But make sure that it's backed up by clear evidence and clear policy recommendations.
Let me just make it as brief as possible as the last word now. We have collaboration between Africans and Europeans in terms of corruption. You talk of the oil deal, you talk of so many things. Tax evasion is part of it. How close your organizations? What efforts have you made in that direction?
Laure, just take that question.
Yeah. Well, we do work a lot on the issue of corporate accountability, and of course we know that this multinational doing business in Africa, they are coming also from Europe, not only, but from Europe. And we've been trying to implement some changes here at EU level to force this multinational to disclose the financial information country per country, so that we just can see what are the real what are the real economic impact of this multinational are doing at national level. Just see where the people are working, where are the operations taking place, so that they can pay their fair share of tax in those countries and not just move their money offshore so as to avoid paying taxes. So that's been one of our big battles over the past few years. Hopefully we're going to win it.
Hopefully you'll win it.
Yeah.
Are you ashamed at all that in the 21st century we are talking of corruption in Europe?
I mean, I think there's corruption everywhere. I think it's going to be very difficult to eradicate corruption, but what we can do is make sure that we have strong rule of law, strong systems in place which go beyond the day-to-day politics. I think what we need is strong institutions which have within their mandate to be transparent and to tackle corruption. And I think that is how we are going to make progress, because without those institutions, it's all about political whim of whatever elite is in power, and that's why we work to strengthen those institutions, but also to make sure that there's the information out there, whether it's from corporates or from governments, so that citizens can actually use that to hold their governments to account.
Just on that one, I'm not sure that I'm ashamed to be talking about corruption in the 21st century. This is a very ingrained piece of human behavior. I suspect in the 22nd century we'll still be talking about corruption. What I'm ashamed of is that there is essentially state-sanctioned corruption of the kind that you heard today around golden visas. So there are people in power who are essentially promoting schemes which facilitate corruption. That's something to be deeply ashamed of in Europe, and I really hope that those governments in the European Union can do something about that.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, thanks so much, guys. That's gonna